Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to the Usagi Podjimbo podcast. I am your host, Mike, and let's get into this new episode. Sorry for the wait when it comes to putting out episodes. I had a lot of stuff going on in my personal life, so that's why I have not been recording any episodes, unfortunately. But we are moving on from Blade of the Gods into the teacup issue, which is a fun issue, might I add. Anyways, let's get into this. Let's start the fun. Hope you guys enjoy. And remember to like and share the podcast. And if you're whatever podcast platform you choose to listen to this on, please share and make sure to leave a review for the podcast. That's the best way to help. Listen and share the podcast. Thanks a lot, guys. All right, so let's get started with this issue of Usagi Yojimbo. So we start off with Usagi walking over a big waterfall, like bridge, like spanning over this big waterfall. He's like, "Oh, this area looks familiar," and he's like, "I'm in the Gishu Prefecture province." And he's like, "Oh, I wonder what Lord Noriyuki has been up to and Tomoe has been up to. How are they faring?" I guess it's been some time since Usagi has actually seen the two of them, which, it's crazy to think about that so much time has passed, I guess, between his adventures for when he saw them to now. But I'm curious to know if this happens after the previous issue of Blade of the Gods. Is this after his fight with Jay? Who knows? I don't know. I mean, I'll find this out later on. But he's like, it would be certainly nice to see them again. And Usagi gets caught off guard. He hears like a slash, cut, parry, swerve. And I don't know how he can hear parry, but I guess he can because he's a trained samurai. But we'll go with that. Uh, and he's like, oh my God, there's Gin. And you see Gin, and Gin's like, ha, back you vermin, ha ha ha. Gin does what Gin does best. I very much feel like Gin is very much the Wolverine slash like Logan in this series because he just fucking made a Wolverine reference, you know. But he definitely kills these guys, and you see Usagi afterwards start clapping, and he's like, "Huzzah, huzzah!" You know, he's like, "Your swordsmanship is expert," and he's like, "You're the expert swordsman," basically what he says, and he's like, "You're slow to the mind, but quick on the blade." And he's like, "What? Usagi, how long have you been there? I could have, minced you into mulch." And Usagi's like, "What's mulch?" So I guess maybe Gin knows what mulch is, but Usagi doesn't. I guess Gin has seen mulch in his time. Maybe mulch hasn't come to Japan. I don't know. Who knows? Uh, he's like, Usagi says, "You look like you were doing just fine with these guys." And he's like, "Was there a bounty on their head?" And he's like, "No, unfortunately not." Gin has been hired to basically uh, take this teacup. It's like this important teacup, a priceless teacup made by a famous craftsman. And he is taking this, he's basically in charge of guarding it, being a bodyguard for the teacup. And he is taking it to wherever exactly it needs to go. So it turns out a rival tea master named Okihana, wants the teacup, and he wants it because he's like a rival tea master to this other tea master. And so Usagi decides to join him on his journey to help guard this teacup. He's headed the same way as Gin, and he's like, okay, come on, I could use the fellowship. On their travels with Usagi and Gin to deliver this teacup, they happen upon a a boatman who, I guess, a ferryman, I guess you could say he is. And he's like, oh, the ferry's cheap. He's like, it's a good idea. Gin says it's a good idea. It'll save us some time. And Usagi happens to notice as they're rowing some bubbles popping or bubbling up out of the water. So as Usagi and Gin are traveling down on this ferry, we get this really cool scene of them. They see the agents that Oku sent after them, or Oki sent after them. Uh, he's like, "Oh, it's a trap," and they're like, "Ah, kill him." Even the ferryman is in on this. So who can you really trust? I actually noticed this the second time he has a sword. He's like, "Haha, kill him." I didn't notice that before the first time I read this, but they jump out of the water. You see Gin. Gin stabs one of them right through the stomach, and they're slashing, hacking away, and trying to fend for their lives. And he's like, Usagi says, "That's the last of them," and Gin says, "Boy, am I upset." Usagi's like, "Why? Because Oki sent more agents after you?" And he's like, "No, because he didn't decide. He decided not to bribe me." Instead, he could have just bribed me and I would have basically given up the teacup. But we get this really, really funny scene where they're both still in the boat, and Gin is talking about how Oki shouldn't have wasted your time with money on incompetent help, and if you spent a little more, you would have the best kind of help. And they spring a leak in the boat, and the boat sinks. And Usagi is all upset, and he's like, "I hate it. I hate having to walk back, from a boat ride." He's like, Gin says, if you hadn't cut through the boat, we wouldn't be in this mess. He's like, "What do you mean, me?" He's like, "I'm an expert swordsman. So Gin really definitely thinks highly of his self in this situation. But Gin and Usagi finally get to a rest stop, and they're still talking about the assassins that they killed. And they're eating, they're having a fine tea and a fine meal, bring it to us. We see these two little kids, they're bear kids. Basically, they're hungry, they're starving. And Gan's like, "What are you looking at, you brats? Go away." And the innkeeper basically, shoos them away. He's like, what, get out of here, beat it. You heard the samurai. And Usagi, being the good little bunny he is, he's like, wait, obviously they're famished. Here's some to buy them a meal. And Usagi and Gin get to know these two children a little bit. But we find out from these two kids, one's a sister and a brother. We find out that both of their parents are dead, and they're on their way traveling through the lands of Gishu, or traveling through the land to find their uncle, who is a sandal repairman. And they don't really know if he will accept them because he is not wealthy or well off. But that's like their main concern is just getting there. They've taken the wrong road twice, I guess you could say, is what they say. And Usagi is like, "Yeah, we'll take you there. Come with us. We'll help you out, and take care of you." And Gin's like, "What? What do you mean we're gonna take care of them? What's going on here?" Gin is basically not a fan of this whatsoever. He's not on Usagi's side. He doesn't want to take these kids with him, and he's like, "Beat it, kid. I don't want to be around." But Usagi kind of convinces him to reluctantly take the children with him. But Gin goes off by himself. He's like, Usagi doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know. But he goes, while he's walking away from the campfire that they've made. As he's walking away from the campfire he made, like talking and stuff, he's like, oh, he hears like these skulkers, like people like skulking around. He's like, "Oh, it's an ambush, Usagi. We've got company." He's like, "Thanks for warning me, Gin. as they both double team these guys, and he's like, "Here, catch Usagi, catch the cup, take it with you. I'll take care of these guys. Get the cup to safety. Uh, I'll meet you in town." And he's like, "Run, Usagi, run!" Again tells Usagi to run. He's like, "Run, run, Usagi. I'll keep these kids safe." And Usagi's like, "I've got to live up to Gen's trust in me and protect this priceless artifact." And Usagi runs and he gets to this big, ginormous cliff. He's on the edge of this cliff and he's like, "Oh no, it's a trap." And the cat bad guys, he go after Usagi, and Usagi tries to fight them off valiantly, but he does that. But he gets away, and he's like, "Haha, I still got it. I saved the teacup. I'll deliver this again. Yeah, I'll take care of it." And what happens? Usagi gets a little cocky, and he happens to trip over a tree root, and he's like, "Oh no, did I?" You see this teacup. I picture the teacup basically falling in slow motion, like, "Oh no, we gotta not drop the teacup. Oh no, it fell." And he is like, "What have I done? I've destroyed what I was entrusted to me. I can't do nothing. I can't but confront again now. I can't do this. I can't do this. Yeah, I gotta atone for my misdeeds." And Usagi gets into town, so we end up meeting up with Gin, and Gin, there's a little Gru the Wanderer, looks like reference in the background because he's thinking about cheese dip. Does Gru the Wanderer like cheese dip? That's kind of funny if it is. But later on, Usagi gets into town, meets up, and he's failed. He thinks he's failed. He's besmirched. His honor is destroyed by this priceless teacup, this priceless art that he basically just let crash into the ground. And he Gen's like, "Hi, hey, how's it going? Been looking all over for you." And he's like, "Forgive me, Gen. I have failed you." Usagi says, "The cup's shattered." And he's like, Gen starts laughing. He's like, "Why are you laughing, Gen?" And it turned out the teacup Usagi had was actually from the roadside inn that they stopped at. And he was like, it was just a worthless teacup. And Usagi, you see Usagi's face change, and he's like, "What are you talking about, worthless teacup?" He's like, "Oh, I shouldn't, mince you into mulch." And you get this good gag, and he's like, "What's mulch?" Gin says. He's like, "It's okay. I had the teacup all along. Let me buy you a drink to cool you off." And Usagi is definitely mad at this point. And he's like, "Please forgive me, Usagi, but I knew the brigands would go after you if they thought you had the teacup. So it was basically a bait and switch scenario that they put themselves through, or Gin thought of. Gin's actually more smarter than he looks. And Usagi happens to ask, "I almost forgot what happened to the kids." He's like, "Oh, well, I dropped them off. I dropped off the cup, and then I took them to their uncle." And you're like, "Would you like me some more sake, Usagi?" And you get this weird look on Gen's face. And he's like, "Excuse me, but I have to go wash my hands." He's like, "Make sure you take your time," and stuff like that. And we see Usagi leave the building. And Usagi basically leaves Gin and leaves him with the bill and kind of walks off. And he's like, Gin finds Usagi and he says, "I hope you're not upset, but I'm sticking you with the bill." He's like, "What are you talking about? I left you the tab." He's like, "Nonsense. Nonsense. I told the innkeeper's wife that you would pay." So they both left and didn't pay the bill. He's like, "Besides, I'm almost broke anyways," Usagi says. "The one who collected the huge reward was you." And he's like, Gen's like, I didn't really collect this huge reward. So we find out that Gen he basically, gave all the money he got from the teacup, or most of the money, to the uncle of the kids he took to help out and to help him out and to afford. And we find out that again is uh, he's soft headed and soft hearted, I guess. Apparently, Usagi, you know, kind of talks to him about that and whatnot. And then they walk off and they kind of, have a nice laugh about it, which is pretty funny. But we see them like it's almost like parting separate ways. And Usagi asks again, oh, what are you gonna do? And he's like, well, I've heard of this guy named Zatu Ino in the area, and there's a big reward on his head. He's like, Zatu Ino, wait a minute, did I know that guy? Kind of, he's like, I guess, I'll go after him. So Gin is going to go look for Zatu Ino, and we see all these guys at the end of the book. They're all going after Usagi and Gin. They're all hiding behind these rocks, and they're looking for I guess because they kind of maybe got stiffed with the bill. It looks like they stiffed them with the bill, so they're going after them. Or I don't know if it's Oki's people who are going after them. But this issue was a lot of fun. It's not my favorite issue, but I think I do like it more the second time I read this issue, and it was a lot of fun. It's funny. You get to find out more about Gin and how he's not such a bad guy. He's not such a selfish guy, but he did try to stick one over on Usagi. So this one wasn't too bad. It wasn't bad. It was fun. It was fun, but it's not my favorite. I did like the fight scenes in it that were a lot of fun and stuff like that. But yeah. Well, moving on to the next issue, which is what was the next issue? Let me see. I can't remember what the next issue is. It is. I think it's called The Shogun's Gift, which that one will be fun to read. But yeah, thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.